Hey everyone, it is May 20, 2015. I'm Rene Ritchie, and right now we're going to talk about new Macs, Apple Watch updates, and the week in Apple. This is the iMore Show. Joining me once again from the wilds of the Midwest, Ali Kazmucha. How are you, Ali?
I am well.
You look well. It looks like summer is actually there, and you've thawed out a little bit.
It is yesterday and today have been kind of cold, like 40s. But it's been
Or
like 80s other than that, which is kind of strange, but
it's
we'll
those Great
see.
Lakes. You can't trust them.
Yeah, it's supposed to get warm again tomorrow. No, you can't trust them at all.
Also joining us from the cod that is caped, Peter Cohen. How are you, Peter?
Good, thank you, Renee.
Did the cod actually fly around with the cape? Because that kind of seems a little bit ostentatious.
You know, the cod run the Cape, kind of like the mafia.
All right, so a lot of news. I just got to warn you guys, like Georgia and I think Ali last time, my Apple Watch, the actual Apple Watch that I ordered, not the loaner that I have from Apple, is on a truck for delivery. So if the doorbell rings, it'll be like a Looney Tunes cartoon where you just see a little puff of smoke and then suddenly Renee will be gone. Because I'm not missing that thing for anything. But with my luck, it'll arrive like at the last possible moment UPS can deliver on any given day. So I'm not too worried. It did say that it finally reached Canada this morning, which according to the map was the middle of Saskatchewan and Manitoba, but I think that's just their generic placement for Canada.
I just checked my order status and it hasn't changed. It still says that I'm not going to get it until sometime in late May or early June.
So my mom originally had June 15th to June 23rd as a delivery date, and then she got it today.
Well,
And
that gives me hope.
that was the pink band, which apparently it took forever to make pink. I don't know what the deal is. To make black stainless steel and aluminum pink, apparently really, really hard.
I assume that Apple's fabricators are still trying to mine the rare metals, rare earth metals that they need to make my particular phone. I
Well,
mean,
It's
the
not
not
even
watch.
pink aluminum, it's like pink, whatever that material is, polyelastomer,
fluoroelastomer.
molybdenum, or whatever, yeah.
Fluoroelastomer. It's fancy word for rubber, but pigments are hard. Making, as we learned with the iPhone 4, the white iPhone 4 that took I think what 8 months.
Why can't they just use crushed bug shells like Starbucks did
Right?
for its frappuccinos?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
The
high
white
protein.
iPhone. I think the white iPhone was a lot with the coating because it
Yeah.
was yellowing.
Yeah, and yeah, they had like a bunch of problems, and I'm sure that these bands are all different weights, so who knows what kind of chemical compositions. But I do know that pink is often a color worn by supervillains, especially combination of green and pink. So we'll have to see how that goes. Hopefully, my mom won't get that going. All right, so on to the news. Big week for the Mac, Peter.
For once.
But they dropped it in a press release. What's going on?
Well, you know, I think the big problem here is that it's just kind of an incremental update for the machines that were updated because Apple is a little bit hamstrung right now um, with uh, with chips from Intel. So the upgrades that we saw this week, the refreshes to the 15-inch MacBook Pro and the Retina iMac, the 5K iMac, are uh, a little bit on the modest side. There are not new Broadwell processors inside either one of them. They both use fourth generation Intel Core i5 or i7 chips. So they're still last year's hardware for the most part. Although there are some nice embellishments, like the MacBook Pro, for example, gets the Force Touch trackpad that we've seen on the MacBook and the 13-inch MacBook Pro. So all of Apple's uh, current laptops, with the possible exception of the 2012 MacBook Pro, which I don't really consider part of the current product cycle anymore, use this new technology, which is kind of nice. And you know, some improved efficiencies and a little bit of improved battery storage capacity equal another hour of battery life. So last year's model got 8 years per 8 years. Yeah, I wish 8 hours per
Also,
charge. Yeah, the MacBook Pro, 15-inch MacBook Pro now gets 9 hours per charge, so that's nice too.
and the SSD is faster, I think, too. Is that correct?
Yeah, the SSD, Apple has switched over to the M2 SSD that it put in the MacBook Pro when the MacBook Pro was refreshed in April, and that is yielding reads and writes that are up to twice as fast as they were before. So you're getting even better SSD performance than you got before.
Yeah, I think that's really so. The the new MacBook was introduced in March, and the 13-inch MacBook Pro was updated along with it, and it did get not Haswell, sorry, Broadwell, as far as I know, and the trackpad. So the 15-inch took longer, got the trackpad. Didn't is there a big difference when you're at the 15-inch quad core scale between Haswell and Broadwell, Peter?
There are some differences, but they've mainly got to do with efficiency as opposed to actual performance. Broadwell is a tick in Intel's roadmap. It's a reduction in die size from what we saw from Haswell last year, and because the new die size is so small, 14 nanometers, which is incredibly tiny. Intel has had some production problems getting the yields that they're looking for out of the chips that they're making. So they haven't been able to ramp up Broadwell production nearly as fast as they initially anticipated. And unfortunately, the companies that Intel supplies to, like Apple, are suffering as a result. The Apple's not the only company that had wanted to release new products based around Broadwell before now, but because of course our focus is Apple, we notice it more. But the Haswell chips that Apple would be looking for both the 5K iMac and the MacBook Pro, the 15-inch MacBook Pro, the higher speed, higher wattage ones, are not yet available in general release. So they're coming down the pipe as fast as Intel can make them. But unfortunately, Intel's product release schedule was just not consistent with what Apple wanted to do. So Apple's, punting and making the best it can now. And, I don't think that users are suffering as a result.
Well, one question we're getting a lot, and maybe you have some insight on this, is does Apple then put out Broadwell versions, or do you think they'll skip it and go straight to Skylake?
Well, I think that they could put out Broadwell versions next year. The Broadwell's going to be around for a while. There's nothing saying that Apple has to switch to Skylake. If Apple
Thunderbolt 3, Peter, I want it so badly.
Yeah, Thunderbolt 3 would be a compelling reason, although, the use cases for it right now are a little bit limited, I think, for most people. Thunderbolt 2 is plenty fast enough for most consumers anyway. Pro users who are working in 4K video or even bigger video could certainly benefit from having Thunderbolt 3 connectivity, because then they'd be able to do things like hook up 5K displays, and maybe we'd seen the return of Thunderbolt display mode to the Retina iMac. It's of course not capable of being driven as an external monitor, as older 27-inch iMacs are capable of doing. But Apple's compensated for that by readjusting the price of the 27-inch iMac. So you can now get a 5K iMac for $2,000, and it initially came out, it was $2,500. It's a little bit slower, but it's still a nice fast machine.
I want to get into that, but the MacBook's really I think the high end one, the one with the new discrete graphics unit, can actually power quote unquote 4K plus, which is the wider 4K monitors. But Ali and I were talking about this morning because she hasn't made the jump to a Retina laptop yet, and I was trying to think the MacBook is probably underpowered for what she'd do. I switched to a 13-inch MacBook Pro last year, but I don't have the fancy new trackpad. Ali, is any of this stuff appealing to you yet?
I want the new keyboard.
It's only on the MacBook.
I know, and I don't want the MacBook, so I get nothing.
Yeah, well, so there was that post by Marco
ashes
Arment.
in your mouth.
There was that post from Marco Arment last night, and he was not happy with the new MacBook. It didn't fit what he wanted. He decided to reorder the 15-inch MacBook Pro, but there was a lot of responses to that saying it really was ideal. So some people love the keyboard, some people don't like it. Some people love the trackpad, some people don't like it. Some people love the portability and size. It's like before I could tell basically the MacBook Air was for portability and the MacBook Pro was for power, but now it seems like there's more subtle gradations in what's best for who.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go on.
I would agree with that. I don't know. As far as the keyboard and the trackpad, I don't know if I can see Apple doing two separate things long term for that.
Yeah, I don't know if the keyboard is. Do you get the sense if the keyboard is a concession? Is that keyboard just because it's so thin and they don't need it on the thicker computers, or is that keyboard where they want to go with every computer?
It wouldn't be the first time that Apple made a concession a feature.
Yeah.
So, it could be that.
It's not a bug; it's a feature.
Yeah. I don't know. Kind of same mentality if you want to think about it that way.
Yeah.
I liked the keyboard, but I haven't used it long term. It's just playing with it in the Apple Store, but. Yeah, it's probably a matter of preference, just like some people still like gaming keyboards and the big, the bigger keys. I don't. Every time I hear my brother typing on it, it makes me want to throw it into a wall. But you know, it's different for different people.
I think that the Apple didn't put the new keyboard on the MacBook Pro 13-inch and 15-inch models because it didn't have to. The MacBook itself was, or that keyboard was engineered initially for the MacBook, and certainly the thinness, the incredible thinness of the MacBook, has a lot to do with it, because those keys don't travel nearly as far as the keys do on other MacBook keyboards. And so on. But putting in the Force Touch trackpad wasn't a huge engineering issue. It was basically just a component swap out and some additional logic that was on the main logic board to make sure that the circuitry is handled. It's not a huge engineering issue. Reworking the keyboard is potentially more of an engineering issue. Plus, Apple, it's the first machine that they've seen come out with that keyboard, so I'm sure that they want to see how well it does on the MacBook before they start importing it to other models. But Tim Cook's been very forceful about saying, look, the MacBook is the future of the laptop, not just the future of Apple laptops, but the future of laptops in general.
But he meant gold, right?
Yeah, he meant gold, space gray, and silver, of course. No, seriously, he is very forceful about the MacBook being the future of laptops. So I think it's an inevitability that we're going to see a lot of the technology that's in that MacBook make its way out to other machines. But as it makes sense for Apple to do so, Apple's not going to do it just for the sake of having fast or different stuff in a new machine. As much as I was kind of hoping to see USB-C make its debut in the 15-inch MacBook Pro.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of that. It's an interesting time because there is so much in transition. It feels like a couple of years ago, but even more so because all these pieces are like the trackpad should let us get thinner MacBook Pros eventually too, but they didn't do the redesign this year. And the MacBook Air has been left. I mean, Ali, that's your go-to machine. Still no Retina display, still no Force Touch. It's like it got the Broadwell bump, but it didn't get any other love. Sad.
It is, and I think that. Part of it is just based on the refresh cycle. The MacBook Air was refreshed before the new MacBook, and the 13-inch MacBook Pro came out, right?
So do you think that they're gonna? And people have asked this before, but do you think that this is the beginning of the slow de-escalation of the MacBook Air, and the MacBook will take its place eventually?
I wouldn't be surprised to see the 11-inch MacBook Air disappear sooner rather than later, but I think the 13-inch MacBook Air is going to be around for a while, simply because it's such a popular model. I mean, in the store that I work at, I think we sell probably more 13-inch MacBook Airs than we do any other Mac model.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's Apple's golden goose right now for the laptops. Switching to the Macs, I have the 4K iMac and I love it, and it got a price drop. But also, you can now get 5K. You can now get 5K for 2K, Peter, and you get a free Mac thrown in, which is kind of crazy. But the big downside is it's only platter drives. You can't get any other options on it.
Yeah, exactly. Apple. I think Apple thought that the price, or maybe not Apple, but maybe Apple's customers thought the price of the 5K iMac was a little dear. So Apple did two things actually. It's kind of cool. First of all, they took the existing model, the 3.5 gigahertz model with a quad-core Intel Core i5 processor, 8 gigs of RAM, and a 1 terabyte Fusion drive. They took that existing model and they made it $200 less. So if you have been sitting on the fence looking at the 5K iMac, now is a better time to buy than ever before. It's only $22.99 for that machine, so it's $200 less than it was before. That's a great deal. But if spending any more than $2,000 is just more than you or your corporate overlords can justify, Apple now has a 3.3 gigahertz version. Uses a Haswell-based Intel Core i5, just like the other 27-inch 5K iMac, but it's clocked a little bit slower, 3.3 gigahertz. It also comes with 8 gigs of RAM, but it is limited to a 1 terabyte hard drive, a regular, stinky, spindle-only hard drive. So you don't get the Fusion drive that you get on the 3.5 gigahertz 2299 model. You only get a 1 terabyte drive, and you also get a slightly less robust graphics card as well. You get the AMD Radeon R9 M290 instead of the M290X, and let me tell you, that X makes all the difference. Actually, I don't know.
Yeah, we were trying to figure it out. Like, we could find the X, but we couldn't find the non-X version. So it's hard to tell that. That's often the case with Apple. So what do you guys think? I still think that if you're looking for a 5K display, you might as well get a Mac. I wouldn't go for the spinning platter drive just because I've learned they're not my favorite things. And once you go SSD, you can't go back. Fusion's a good compromise. If you can afford SSD, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. I'm a little hesitant with the 15-inch MacBook just because it's not running Broadwell, but that's just my bias towards always the newest and quote unquote the greatest. But I think these are both. I don't know if you use this word, Peter, but they feel like procedural updates.
Yeah, I didn't use that word, but that is a really good way to look at them. They're refreshes. There aren't a lot of major engineering changes under the hood. You know, I am asked all day long, every day, should I buy now or should I wait? Should I buy now or should I wait? And my stock answer to this has never changed. My stock answer to this is buy when you're ready to buy, and just accept that within a certain period, whatever you buy is going to be replaced with something else. You know, if you buy a 2015 Honda Civic, eventually Honda is going to replace the Civic with a 2016 model, or it's going to replace the Civic with something else altogether that's an equivalent. And you can't cry over spilled milk. You have to be happy with what you have and just accept that the model that you have was right for the purchase at the time. The same goes for the 15-inch MacBook Pro or the 27-inch iMac or whatever you're going to get. If you're going to get a computer, just accept that it's going to be replaced sooner or later, and make sure that the computer that you're buying meets your needs now and meets your reasonable expectations of what you're going to need in the future.
I think all of that is very, very sane advice, Peter. So we're not going to ask you to become our carnival basker anytime soon.
Thank you.
So, Ali, this kind of clears the Mac stage for WWDC. Whenever Apple drops press releases, it makes me think that they have bigger, better plans. Otherwise, they would trot something out on stage. So does this give you are you disappointed we won't see new Macs at WWDC, or are you excited for what we will see?
I'm a little disappointed with Macs. I personally don't think we're going to see any other Macs at WWDC. That's just me. But I'm excited for WWDC for other reasons, I think. So
Apple TV?
Apple TV, yes.
More HomeKit stuff?
Yes.
So many things. All right, so switching gears, we got the first Watch OS update. It's Watch OS 1.0.1. So the labeling is it's not even a point release. It's a dot. It's a bug fix release. Although Apple did sneak in support for diversity emojis and extra languages, which makes me think that the original Watch OS 1.0 is sort of like iOS 8.2, and this is sort of like iOS 8.3. These watches were manufactured a while ago, so the software's been on them for a while, so it's a very timely update. Let's go first through the procedure first, Ali. What was it like to update the watch compared to updating a phone?
It was about the same. I mean, I kind of look at the Apple Watch app as it's pretty much like a mirrored version of iPhone settings. So like you'd basically go into the watch app and go to settings, general, just like you would to go for a software update for anything else, which I think creates familiarity for people that, like that. It was a pretty easy process for me. I did get like a message that said that I had to plug my watch in because it had to be 50%. My watch was at like 80. So I don't really know what that was about.
Regardless. Yeah, so it has to be on the charger to do the download, and I think that's because it wants to escalate. Usually with the Apple Watch, it's on Bluetooth all the time and escalates to Wi-Fi only if it really needs to. But for the download and transfer of the file, I think it wants to be on Wi-Fi all the time, and that's a power drain. So they want to make sure that actual transfer happens on Wi-Fi, and to sort of make sure nothing bad happens, they want you on a charger the entire time.
Okay. I, like many others, I think misread it because I thought you either had to be on a charger or at 50% or over.
Yeah, so it's both, and you have to be on Wi-Fi for your iPhone as well. People found that out.
Yeah. So I mean, it went smoothly once I plugged it in and did what apparently I was supposed to do. But yeah, I didn't have any issues. It only took a couple minutes to install. Yeah, went pretty smoothly.
I would say mine took 15, 20 minutes. Is that what yours took?
I don't know, because I didn't, since it yelled at me about plugging in, I just kind of said never mind and waited until last night, and then I did it when I went to bed. But I mean, I picked it up. I know it finished. I don't know, probably like 10, 15 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, so you go in, you open the Apple Watch app, you go to the My Watch page, you go to software update, You tell it to install. If you have a passcode, it asks you for your passcode. You enter that in. It begins downloading it and transferring it to your phone, at which point my phone said, do you want to install it? And if I didn't, I could press cancel or install, and it had a timer like it does on some other devices that counts down. So if you don't say anything, it'll just automatically start rebooting. And then I think it went through the little reboot cycle, not the reboot cycle twice, but it does that little animation where it has on the watch face the Apple logo with the pattern and the lines going around. And I think some people said it went through that twice. All I know is mine took about 10 minutes at that point.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
The one thing I was surprised, it does have the diversity emoji. You can even show the live long and prosper, Mr. Spock hand, but you can't enter that, and you can't enter the diversity emoji. You can only, if someone sends them to you, it displays just fine, but I couldn't find a way to go from the, Simpsons yellow faces to any of the different skin tone emoji.
Yeah, I have like 4 emoji that I use over and over again.
High availability emoji. All right, so the update is out. It's supposed to improve performance for Siri. It's supposed to improve performance for a lot of things, a lot of bug fixes. Accessibility, voiceover got a bunch of bug fixes as well, which I know some people in the accessibility community were eager for. So all in all, I think it was a good update, a good first update at least for the Apple Watch. Do you agree, Ali?
Yeah, I would. One thing that I wanted to, and I don't know if this is something, we had talked about it previously, that the Apple Watch knows when you're on your iPhone, so it doesn't like ping you for messages. It's not, prior to this update, and I don't know if maybe this is just something that's a coincidence, it still pinged me like if I was working on my Mac. But today, I don't, like if my messages app is open on my Mac, I'm not getting notifications on my watch.
So I never did. I think you and I already talked about this, because whenever I had messages front on my Mac, it wouldn't ping me, and if it was behind, it'd come in on my Mac, and only if I ignored it would it go to my Apple Watch. So I don't know if that's was always supposed to be working.
Bug, or maybe for some people, I don't think for me maybe it wasn't working correctly, because I could be typing in my messages app and it was still, tapping on my wrist. So maybe that was a bug fix that was included somewhere in there, because now it seems to be working properly for me.
Well, either way, I'm glad it's working, and let's pay attention to that, because that notifications is one of those things where it still feels, and Peter, I don't want to put all this on your lap, but it still feels like it's getting better between iPhones and iPads, but the Mac is still, I don't know, not as well integrated yet.
Yeah, I would be inclined to agree with that. I think that Apple's still got some work to do there.
Like my phone will ring, and then call relay will start ringing on my Mac. I'll answer my phone, and for about 10, 15 seconds, it's still ringing on my Mac.
Yeah, that drives me crazy. And I've also gotten the problem where where FaceTime will just ring continuously on my Mac even after a call's been intercepted on another device.
Yeah, so we'll hopefully get all of that fixed. Before we move on, I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to tell you about one of our sponsors, one of our awesome sponsors this week, and that is lynda.com. Lynda.com is the online learning platform with over 3,000 on-demand video courses to help you strengthen your business, technology, and creative skills. For a free 10-day trial, you can visit lynda.com/iMore. That's lynda.com/iMore. So lynda.com, I talk about it all the time. If you're still not familiar with them, basically they are this huge online repository of knowledge on the internet. I've likened them to the Matrix, where if you need to know something, you just jack in and say, teach me how to fly a helicopter. I know Kung Fu. But it really is the closest thing we have to that right now, because you have a problem, there's a piece of software you need to learn, there's a skill you want to pick up. You just go there, you look for it, you will almost certainly find it, and you'll find a course taught by an expert at doing just that. And you can watch the entire course, of course, or you can just search for it. You can find the part you need to know, the specific knowledge you want to find out, and just look at that part. You can watch an hour at a time or just a few minutes at a time. It's entirely up to you. So lynda.com is for problem solvers, for the curious, for people who make things happen. Maybe you want to master Excel, learn negotiating tactics, build a website, get better at Photoshop. All you have to do is go to lynda.com. Here's some of the cool courses they're offering right now. Excel 2013 Power Shortcuts. I still don't know what a pivot table is. Am I embarrassed by this? Maybe slightly. Maybe I should know what a pivot table is. I don't know what a pivot table is. I can just go to Lynda and find that out. Weekly Office Workshop, going paperless start to finish. I spent an entire day this weekend going through papers that get sent to me all the time, and I have no use for them. They come in, I open them, I recycle or shred them, and I feel horrible about this. So going paperless is the next thing on my list. There's iPhone and iPad security fundamentals. There's income tax fundamentals. There's growth hacking fun. It's all this great stuff that's available to you absolutely on demand. So here's some of the benefits you get with Linda. You can watch and learn from top experts passionate about teaching you. You can stream thousands of video courses on demand. You can do it exactly at your own schedule. You can learn at your own pace. They're constructed so you can watch them start to finish or just digest bite-sized pieces anytime it suits you. You can browse each course transcript to follow along. You can search for answers. You can skip to that point. You can take notes and refer back to them later. You can download tutorials and watch them on the go on your iPhone, on your iPad, on your Android device. You can create and save. I mean, the list literally, it goes on and on. I'm running out of screen space on a 5K iMac. I'm trying to tell you how awesome this is. So once again, lynda.com will give you access to unlimited training on hundreds of topics, all for one flat rate. So whether you're looking to become an expert, you just want to get better at something you're passionate about, you want to learn something new, go to lynda.com/iMore, sign up for your free 10-day trial. That's more than a week. If you haven't made up your mind in a week, you have more than that to make up your mind. I'm pretty sure you're going to be convinced. That's lynda.com/IMORE, lynda.com/iMore. Thanks, Linda. All right, well, we have more stuff to talk about. I'm going to jump ahead slightly because we haven't spoken about the iPhone so much lately because there's been new Macs and there's been new Apple Watches, but there's been a little bit of talk now again about the iPhone 6s and 6s Plus, which are the presumed names for Apple's next generation iPhones, which again are presumed to be coming out this September. And there's a lot of stuff going around. I want to sort of get your guys' reads on it. So one of the things we've heard first and foremost is Force Touch. Ali, you've used it on the Apple Watch now. What do you think about Force Touch on the iPhone?
I think it would be useful. I think the first implementation I would like to see is where I can force touch the screen to clear all notifications from Notification Center.
Yes.
So yeah, I think there could be a lot of uses for that through iOS.
I'm kind of torn in the middle, Peter, because the Apple Watch is very simple. It's basically like a right mouse click whenever you use Force Touch, but the MacBook trackpad is a lot more subtle. There's many more things you can do with it. The iPhone screen is small, but it is trackpad sized. Do you think they need to keep it simple, or can they get more sophisticated like the Mac?
Well, yeah, I mean, leave it to Apple to get sophisticated with stuff like that. I would not put it beyond them to do it, but I do understand that there are technical limitations potentially that would prevent them from implementing it the same way that they have on the Force Touch trackpad.
I think, two things. I want the Force Touch for options, and I think I want the pressure sensitivity, because one of the cool things that you can do with this technology is get that, and I don't know what the levels are. Serenity tried it, and she said it felt like 1024 to her in sort of the Wacom scale, but just the ability to draw something and have the pressure that you put on it affect the thickness and intensity of the color and line, I think would be great, especially on the iPad, but even on something like if they brought highest paper. If they brought you to the iPhone and then you had sort of pressure sensitivity built in and the option to force press to get that sort of extra functionality, I think I'd be very happy with the next iPhone.
Fair enough.
Other features, again, this is a rumor. John Gruber mentioned this a while ago, and that is they're going to go with the link system for the camera, which is a multi-lens system. And Ali, I've heard repeatedly that cameras are one of the biggest upgrade pushers. People will go to a new iPad to get new iPhone to get the new camera, and they're getting to the limits of what you can do, I think, with that 8-megapixel camera. So more megapixels, but also maybe the ability to get depth information.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that the iPhone is, for the most part, the camera on the iPhone is what's determining the thickness too, because focal length you can only do so much. Yeah, and I almost feel like at some point, even if there are people that understand that megapixels aren't the most important thing in regards to a camera, most people don't understand that, and they think more numbers means better. So I feel like Apple has to do that upgrade every couple of years, or people just perceive it as being the same camera. And I do think I have a lot of friends, specifically photographer friends, that they base their upgrades around cameras. A lot of normal muggles do too. So, is the camera, and that's one of the questions I get when a new iPhone comes out, is the camera any better? Yes. Well, it's the same. It looks the same on paper, but it's not, because people just look at that megapixel count. So
I'm a little nervous to be honest. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And what a lot of people do to get more megapixels is they cut up the pixel size. So the sensor is the same size, but every pixel, instead of being 1 pixel, is suddenly 4 or 6 or 8 or some other number. And that means they don't pull in a lot of light. So you get a lot of pixels that that don't have a lot of light information, and then you get crappy photos. But you, what I'm hoping is that they can actually increase the size, and we'll have good size pixels. Like I forget what they are now, 1 point something, maybe 1.8, 1.9. I think HTC went to 2.0 at one point, but that pulls in a lot of light, and then you have more of them, and you can start doing that cool stuff like Nokia did with the 1020, which was 42 or 47 or some ridiculous size, but they didn't take 42 megapixel or 47 megapixel pictures. They took that information and they downsampled it to make an even better lower megapixel image, and that's really exciting. But also the ability, if they have more than one lens, to get the depth information, then you can start doing bokeh and all these other cool. And I think you're absolutely right that people, you call them muggles, I'll call them civilians. I don't know what Peter calls them. Probably late for dinner, but you can start
Nothing I can use in mixed company.
but yeah, you start getting some really interesting photography effects, and it absolutely is a killer feature. I just don't know if they'll have all of that ready for now. So maybe the megapixels first and the rest to come.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I don't necessarily know if I think Apple would put an extra sensor for depth like like HTC did. I don't know if I can see Apple doing that.
They bought the company that does that. It's just like you said, like the HTC. I don't know if HTC didn't pull it off or if it wasn't a great idea. I'm not sure which one of those things is true.
Yeah, I don't I think execution means everything, and I don't necessarily know if the way it was executed. I spent a lot of time with the M8, and while the depth features and some of the different features on that phone were cool, they were very gimmicky, and the software didn't really match the hardware. So while it was cool to be able to adjust the depth even after taking a photo, I had to remember to go in that specific mode and use that mode. So it wasn't a very good user experience. So, and I think that's kind of what Apple does best. So maybe, but I think the software would have to be there.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. The other, oh yeah, so this is 4.7 and 5.5 inches. So this is counters some other rumors and says no new 4-inch iPhone. I know a lot of people are still holding to hope for that. If you look at the Android market, very few. I can't think of any flagship Android phones that are anywhere near 4 inches. Most of them are bigger than the iPhone, if not bigger than the iPhone 6 Plus. So I mean, you can always hold to hope, but it seems reasonable to me that there won't be another 4-inch iPhone. Does that bother you, Peter?
No, not really. I mean, I've gotten used to it, and I think that the people who say, well, the iPhone 6 is too big for my hand or it doesn't feel right are probably at this point the outliers in the edge cases. I think once people have gotten their hands on the iPhone 6, they're very, very happy with it. I know that there are still a lot of iPhone 5 users and even some 4S users out there, and users of older iPhones who, still appreciate the smaller size, but I think a lot of it is just justification for people who may not be at the end of their upgrade cycle yet and may be looking for a reason to love their existing phones as opposed to something new, because the iPhone 6 is so superior in so many ways.
Yeah, I think if anything, I would like to see the screen sizes stay the same, but the casing size gets smaller. Like I see in the future, it's not hard to believe that Touch ID would be incorporated into the screen, so you wouldn't have to have that chin and that forehead anymore, and you could be able to go edge to edge with the glass, and you wouldn't need. I see you nodding your head, Ali. Is that your dream iPhone too?
Yes. No buttons. Buttons break.
Well, it's sort of like Force Touch. I think combined with Touch ID and stuff, I think that to use Ali's term, muggles they still value that escape hatch where there is something that they know they can press to take them back to a known state. But you could set up something. There'll still be buttons on the side. There has to be a couple physical buttons, if not only just to turn on the thing when you've turned it off. So you could have some sort of thing where a double or triple click sets you back to a reset screen or something. So there's always something for civilians to use. But I think, yeah, Force Touch, Touch ID, all of that right in the screen, and then you have like that Tony Stark avatar phone that is just as much screen as you can fit in your hand.
Mm.
I mean, and Apple already has a lot of the software functionality built in. I believe they added it in iOS 6 or 5, assistive touch and a lot of the other functions that are there. So they can pretty much every hardware function can be performed by software at some level. I think it would just be a matter of accessibility and making sure it's executed right, because, I mean, even like just it was a bold move for me. Like, I mean, I know with the 6 Plus you kind of you can't put a power button at the top up here. It's not reasonable to expect people to press that.
I do it on an iPad, Ali.
Yeah, but you hold an iPad with two hands,
I know, but
so
I feel like the industrial design team trolls us because we have Touch ID on one device but not the other. So I keep thinking it's Touch ID in both. They finally fixed that. Now they move the power button. So I spend a minute trying to find the power button on my iPad.
it only took me, yeah, it only took me a little bit to get used to the 6 Plus with this, but it's ergonomics too. The HTC One M8 is a good example of this. The power button is the same concept as the 6 Plus, but it's down further. So when I'm holding that phone like with my thumb on the side, I constantly press that power button when I don't mean to, and the screen turns off. So moving buttons around on a phone is it. I think it's more serious than people think it is
Yeah, you're
sometimes.
limited. Your options are
Yeah,
limited.
yeah, and you can make a wrong choice, and it can severely inhibit a user's experience with that device. That's what the HTC drove me nuts, specifically because I keep pressing the stupid power button every time I'd hold the phone one-handed.
Do you have trouble? Do either of you have trouble pressing? Because I still hit the volume button instead of I still hit the on-off button sometimes instead of the volume button. Take a picture, and I don't know where better to put it, but it feels like
Yeah,
them being squeezable is not the best solution.
Well,
only with the camera.
I've gotten used to pressing the volume button to depress the shutter on the
Yeah.
camera, and that seems to work okay. But I am not thrilled with the placement of the power button on the side, and I don't know if it's muscle memory or bad ergonomics or what.
6 years.
But yeah,
I think it's
exactly.
6 years. Yeah,
6 years of muscle memory. Okay, sure.
I only typically seem to have an issue with the power button with the camera because I mean I've almost trained myself to use the on-screen button for the camera now, which is horrible. But depending on how I pull my phone out of the pocket, maybe the volume buttons are on top, or maybe the
Yeah.
power button's on top, and I don't pay attention, and then I'm like, oh, my screen turned off. That's because I pushed the wrong button. So that's the only time I typically, because the buttons look the same. If you're just looking at the screen, you don't notice if there's one or two. So yeah, that's the only time I typically have an issue with it. I would say it only took me a week or two to get used to the power button being on the side.
Yeah,
But
but then it screwed me up for the iPad because now I'm just used to it being on the side.
well, Peter, you have a 6, don't you?
Yes, I do.
I think it's a little bit worse with the 6. Sometimes I would catch myself going like this because you can, because it's smaller. With the 6 Plus, it's kind of almost like you catch yourself because if you're holding it one-handed, oh, my thumb doesn't even reach up there, so it's like I almost know it's on the side. But with the 6, I still do that.
Yeah, and I've got pretty small hands for a guy. I wear like a medium glove,
I'll
and
hide you
so
in small hands, Peter.
yeah, it's true. A little dinosaur
Like a
stubbies.
T-Rex.
Exactly. So, I've used the 6 Plus. I can actually see the 6 Plus from here, and there are. I don't know if the ergonomics are really that different with the 6 and the 6 Plus, but yeah, I don't find myself doing that too much. What I do find doing is typically if I want to take a picture, it's something that's happening on the fly. Oh, there's a cool thing happening on stage. I want to get a picture of that right away. Or my cat's doing something cute. Or, so I'm like reaching into my pocket. I'm grabbing my phone and I'm pulling it out, and I often cannot, regardless of how big the device is, regardless of whether it's a 6 or 6 Plus. I can't hit that shutter button that's on the screen. I want to hit a physical button. Part of it is just stabilizing it for the shot, too. And I can do that more easily if I'm hitting a physical button on the side of the device than I can if I'm actually tapping on the screen.
Yeah, I think that's all true. To make Peter's life even more complete, there's rumors of a new color, Peter, and that is rose gold to go with the yellow gold, so it would also match the Apple Watch.
All I can
Excited?
say is purple or GTFO.
Allie,
Um,
does rose gold excite you?
Yes, a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
I know, right?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
extra, but it's interesting. They're going to go for they're increasing the palette. They're going from silver, space gray, and gold to silver, space gray, gold, and rose gold. But there's no interest in like the product reds or the yellows or the green, the stuff that they tried out with the 5C. So they definitely want to keep this more as like a high-end metal material sort of thing.
I still see a lot of 5Cs in the wild. A lot of people are using 5Cs, and a lot of people are using 5Cs without cases on them.
Yeah.
People are happy with the colors. So I don't necessarily think Apple made a misstep with the 5C and the polycarbonate case with colors. I think that it certainly fits a certain segment of iPhone users.
It'll be interesting to see if the 5S gets the plastic case this year, or if the 6 and 6 Plus get 6 Seed and 6 Seed Plus this year to have lower end options with plastic cases. So many options. Was there anything else? 2 gigabytes of RAM, which a lot of people have been looking forward to, and gesture control support, which is interesting because what does that mean? Does that mean like what the iPad has, where it has gesture-based notifications, or does it mean stuff that's in Force Touch, or does it mean something else? I don't know, but sounds interesting. Any other wishes for the iPhone 6s or 6s Plus, Ali?
Hmm. I don't know.
I want
Flush camera.
cappuccino. The flush
I
camera is
don't think
interesting
it's gonna
because
happen.
you know that
I
the
know
fine
it can't
folks,
happen.
yeah, Infinite Loop 2 would love to have that thing flat, but they just like the fact that you have this bump on it means that they had to choose. And some people get upset and say that they should have made it thicker and put more battery in, but we talked
No.
about this before. You put battery in, it changes the thermals. It holds in much more heat. It's not RF transparent, so the radios get more complicated, and it gets heavy, and we drop it on our heads. And Apple really believes that lightness is a key usability feature, and they will make these as thin and light as they can.
Hmm.
But there is a rumor that they might change the structural integrity so that they don't bend in cases of accident as much. So that's all good.
It was, and it's weird because maybe it was because the 5 and 5S were smaller that I think the 6 Plus bends easier because you have more area to spread across. But I saw a lot of that same issue when fixing iPhones. The 5 and the 5S always it bent by the volume rockers. It's thin aluminum right there. So at some point, it's just like taking anything, a stick or any material. If you try to snap it, its weakest point is where it's going to bend. That's where that pressure is going to go, and it's going to release.
Here's
So
mine.
for
Mine's been in
that,
my pocket since launch, and it's still flat as a board.
Well, so's your
yeah,
ass, so that doesn't mean anything.
My front pocket, Peter Cohen.
yeah, my black one and my white one are pretty much,
Yeah.
yeah. I put them in my back pocket too, and I'm not going to say I've never forgotten to take it out and sat on my phone in my car or
Yeah, it
flat.
happens. All right, so we're going to take one more quick break, and I am going to tell you about Dashlane. Dashlane is a password manager that has already helped over 2 million users online. We were talking about Dashlane last week because it was when the Starbucks thing happened, and it turned out that Starbucks was not hacked, but people who were using the same simple password on a variety of services. Some other site got hacked, and they just tried the same username and password on Starbucks, and it worked. Ali, I saw you were venting about people using simple passwords. I don't know why they still do it.
I'm going to go ahead and call her out. My partner used the same variation of 2 passwords for the past, I don't even know how long, and they both had 123 in them. Her Starbucks account got hacked into a couple weeks ago, or a couple days ago. She just texted me and said, so someone bought a $100 Starbucks gift card, and I don't quite know. So we started looking, and of course, I should have read the front page of iMore because we already had something up on it. So we had to go through and change all of her passwords, and I've used Dashlane, and I've used several other ones, and yeah, it's a great software for password management for beginners because it's not overwhelming, and it does a great job of walking you through how to use it and why you should be using it.
Yeah, and here's the thing, because all you have to do is, like you said, get started with it. You'll never forget a password again. You'll never have to worry about clicking that send me my password things. You'll just have all your passwords remembered for you, and it's secured on all your devices. It's always up to date. It's always with you wherever you go. It even helps fill in passwords when you're online. You can use complex passwords with numbers and symbols, and I don't mean just taking a word and changing the numbers, the letters to numbers, because hackers know that trick. They try that. I mean, actually having like a blob of pseudo-random numbers and letters and gobbledygook in there, that's not subject to a dictionary attack. You really need a password manager to do that. And what's great about Dashlane is it is free. Yes, it is free. It will save you hours of time. It will keep you secure. It will make your online life just much happier. So you can download Dashlane for free if you go to dashlane.com/iMore right now. You go to dashlane.com/iMore. That's dashlane.com/IMORE. Never forget another password. Thank you, Dashlane. All right, what is next on our agenda? I lost my beautiful sheet that had, here it is. So we have, Apple has put out a new Lightning dock. So when the iPhone 5S and 5C came out, we got a Lightning dock for those, but then the 6 and 6 Plus came out, and because it was a sort of a form-fitted dock, they just didn't work with the newer, bigger phones. And now we have this sort of brand new, came out the same time as the Macs, this long flat dock with with a Lightning connector on it that looks like it can fit any size. I don't know if it can bear the weight of an iPad, but physically it could fit it. So have you looked at this yet, Ali? I mean, to me, it looks like a typical Apple dock, and I know that's what a lot of people want.
Yeah, one word came to mind when I saw this, and that was future-proofing, because it seems like Apple's kind of future-proofing themselves against different form factors with iPhones, because this would fit, as long as they don't change the Lightning connector. I don't know about the iPad, though. I'm interested in trying one of these and putting an iPad on there.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know.
How about a Mini, though? Will it work with a Mini, too?
I would guess it would work with a Mini. I would say yes.
Do either of you use a dock right now?
Yes.
I do.
What kind?
I use an EverDock Duo by Fuse. It is the most amazing dock I've ever had. It has that fancy porous material that uses air pockets to suction it to your desk. They also have, and I'm not sure if they're out yet, I'm going to have to harass them about it. They have a attachment for the Apple Watch, so it just goes onto the dock and then you can add your Apple Watch. My Duo has 2 slots, so I can put an iPhone or an iPad, or 2 iPhones, 2 iPads, however. And since it suctions with the little suction cups on the bottom, you don't have the issue of it falling over if you have. I've had 2 iPads on mine, so that's fine.
I've got the high rise from 12 South, which I'm very fond of, as I am with a lot of 12 South's products. And this is adaptable to different phones, different iPads, and so on. It's a very nice modular device that comes in different finishes depending on what your color preferences is.
So, I mean, you guys know that people love to read the tea leaves when it comes to Apple, and it was weird that they didn't have this dock available when the iPhone 6 and 6 Plus launched. It's also weird that they're launching it now when it's so late in the product cycle. So some people are saying, Peter, that this is Apple's way of saying that they're not going to switch to USB-C on iOS products anytime soon.
Well, that's an interesting assumption, and I think that it's pretty obvious that they're not going to switch to USB-C on iOS devices anytime soon. But whether or not they're doing it for that reason or just because the product's available now, I have no idea.
It's interesting because USB-C, I mean, it's no secret that Apple was heavily involved in the USB-C standard, and if you look at it, it looks pretty much like the Lightning team made it, or at least heavily influenced it. But there are significant differences. USB-C has a lot of advantages in that it's an open standard, so every manufacturer is going to be making things, cables and attachments and adapters for it, and that's sort of what you want on a Mac. Because a Mac has a lot of different things and possibilities available to it. With an iOS device, Lightning had to replace the 30-pin dock, which was a real Frankenstein. Apple kept switching what the different pins in that dock did because FireWire came and went, and then all different sorts of like HDMI came, so that had to continually adapt. And with Lightning, they wanted something that they were sort of future-proof that they could use, and it's sort of smart. Like those pins inside the Lightning cable, I forget if there's 7 or 9, but they can just be changed on the fly, and there's a lot of signals that Apple can send back and forth to an iOS device that's beyond at least my understanding is it's beyond what USB-C can do. But do either of you really want USB-C on an iPhone or an iPad?
I don't really see a need for it, at least now. I can't think of a reason I would need it on my iPhone or iPad.
If USB-C offered a demonstrable improvement in data transfer speed for iOS devices, that might be one thing. But as I understand, that's constrained on the device end as opposed to the connector end right now. So, USB-C obviously has greater bandwidth than Lightning does. USB-C operates at a maximum bandwidth that's similar to the original Thunderbolt of 10 gigabits per second, which is very speedy. If that were something that iOS devices could take advantage of, I'd want to see it, but we're not there yet, and until we are, I don't really see a major reason for why I would want to do it. What I can tell you, working in the store, is that people are still fatigued, going from dock cables to Lightning cables. I get customers come in every day that I work in the store who will ask for a Lightning cable and then grouse about the fact that they had to either throw out or adapt all of their old 30-pin dock connector devices in favor of Lightning devices once they got an iPhone 5 or 6. So, for Apple to switch connectors again On the iPhone and the iPad, I think would be a strategic misstep for them, just in terms of general consumer sentiment. So they would have to have a very compelling reason to do it, that may not translate into making customers very happy.
I think Apple had a compelling reason with the 5, and that was space. Because
Sure.
in component-wise, internally, I think a lot of the reason that you see it the way it is now, in the 4S, and prior iPhones, the headphone assembly, the dock, was at the top, the dock assembly was at the bottom. The dock assembly for the iPhone 4S, and previous iPhones were a monster. I mean, they took up a huge amount of space inside the phone. So with the 5, yep, Apple actually ended up combining the dock, headphone jack assembly, the mic assembly sits on top of that. It's all one piece, and it's smaller than it was prior. So if people wanted thinner phones, more battery capacity, all of the things that people want in new iPhones, I think Apple had a huge problem to solve. Lightning docks are way too big. There's no way that component-wise they could make the phone smaller and keep an actual 30-pin dock in there.
I am shocked at how heavy this is the iPhone 4 white, is compared to the iPhone 6.
I have one right here too.
Are they really that different in weight, or is it just distribution because the 6 is so much bigger?
I think it's distribution.
I think the 6 I know for sure is lighter than the 4S was.
Yeah, I don't know. You'd have to look at weights. I mean, feeling both of them, it kind of feels like they're just. This one just feels clunky, and I think you're right. It might be the distribution.
I could stun somebody with this one, is what I know.
So. Yeah. To get back to the point, though, that Ali just made, Apple did have a compelling reason to go from the 30-pin dock connector, which it had used for a decade, right? Yep. It had used for 10 years before it switched to the Lightning connector, to the Lightning connector itself. Going from Lightning to USB-C, there's less of a compelling reason for it to do, either in terms of internal componentry or configuration or just overall size. So without, like I said, a compelling reason either on Apple's end or on the consumer end, I think that Apple just switching to USB-C for the sake of having one interface to rule them all would be a strategic misstep.
We have a few questions before we finish. This one is from Jonas Gamal. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Ali, does it bother you that Force Touch isn't universal for all Apple Watch apps?
Yes and no. Yeah, I do find it to be a little irritating. It's a little inconsistent when I think it's more of there are things that Force Touch could be there for, and I push it, and I'm disappointed when there's nothing that pops up. So I think over time, maybe some of that stuff will get ironed out with either developers or Apple. But yeah, sometimes I do kind of get that disappointment of, oh, well, that's not an option, apparently. But, yeah.
All right, one more for you. This is from FSUATL. Have you had trouble updating software on your Apple Watch? I have an iPhone 5S and I'm stuck on checking for update. We actually got this question a lot this week. People whose updates didn't finish. And some of them tried rebooting and that worked. Some of them didn't. Some of them tried unpairing and repairing and that worked. I know on mine, I was in the middle of updating and I got a text message and that install or cancel screen disappeared and I couldn't figure out any way to get it back. But within the allotted time of the countdown, it rebooted on its own. So I'm not sure. It's the first time it's happened, so I don't know a lot about the process yet.
Seems to be pretty familiar to what I get on Twitter and when iPhone updates come out. Sometimes they don't show up because I feel like sometimes they hit different servers at different times. I don't know if that's part of it. And Apple servers get hammered when an update comes out. So I feel like I don't know if any server, Apple or anyone else's, would really know what to do when that many people are trying to check for updates. And this being a new product and it being the first update, I think that created some issues as well.
Yeah, so I know Ali's looking into troubleshooting some of the software update stuff, but for now, there's no magic. Really, it is reboot your Apple Watch, then reboot your iPhone. Try unpairing, try repairing them. And I'm guessing, Ali, if you find a good solution, you'll post it?
Yeah, and if you run into a particularly nasty or weird issue, email or put it in the forums, and we'll take a closer look.
Awesome. So, Ali, if people are looking for you on the socials of all places, where can they go?
I am at iMuggle on all of the things, Instagram, Twitter, and every day at iMore.com.
Awesome. What about you, Peter?
I am on the social things at Flarg, Flargh, and of course on iMore.com every day.
If Serenity was here, she would tell you that you could find her at Settern, Settern. You can find me at Rene Ritchie. You can find all of us at iMore. If you haven't already, please go to iTunes. Please subscribe. Please leave a review. It helps people find us. If you want to watch the videos, you can go to youtube.com/iMoreVideo. Before we go, I do want to thank lynda.com for sponsoring the show. They are absolutely a terrific way to learn new skills, to learn new information, whether you want to become an industry expert, passionate about a hobby, or just want to learn something new. Go to lynda.com/iMore, sign up for a free 10-day trial. That's lynda.com/iMore. A couple quick things. I know you guys wrote some editorials this week. We're almost out of time, but I did want to mention them and sort of tease what's coming up next week. Ali, you wrote about the Apple Watch curing your iPhone addiction.
Yeah, it's keeping me off my iPhone a lot more. So it's kind of ironic that you can battle technology with technology, but in our house, that's how it's working for us. We seem a lot less concerned with where iPhones and iPads are laying around, and find ourselves having more conversations, doing more things, and spending less time on the Twitters and Instagrams and getting sucked in. I go to check my phone for one thing, and then I end up getting sucked in Twitter or whatever else is popping up in notifications. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Georgia had a good explanation, not for this, but for perseveration in general, where that your mind panics about forgetting things because it's just kept in cache. But if you actually write it down, it's like writing it to disk, and you don't have to worry about keeping that volatile memory anymore, so you can relax. And I think the Apple Watch is like that. We looked at our iPhone because we were concerned that we'd missed something. Maybe it was a notification there or a tweet, and it kept us in a sort of a state of anxiety. And now with the watch there, the notification pops up. So if our phone's not there, we're not panicking that we're missing something. It's sort of on us, so we feel more secure about it, and then we can just relax.
I would agree.
Have to get a consult. So what's on tap for next week, Ali?
Apps, how-tos, troubleshooting tips,
All
the normal Ali week.
And Peter, you were giving us Oculus said that they're going to go all in on Windows and sort of shove Mac off into some point in the future, and you told us that's just the way it is.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think anybody should be surprised because, as a famous bank robber once said, that's where all the money is kept. So, the fact that they're doing it shouldn't surprise anybody. But they also offered a glimpse at the specs that they're suggesting for the release version, which is coming in Q1 2015, and it sets a pretty high bar. They're looking for a 3.3 or faster gigahertz Haswell processor. They're looking for a NVIDIA 920 graphics card and 8 gigs of RAM, and the only thing that really sort of meets that spec right now is an iMac, and a Retina iMac at that. So, the fact of the matter is Apple is working at a deficit, both in terms of hardware and in terms of software robustness. Apple's Game Center technology isn't up to speed for championships and ladders. They sandbox games that are sold through the Mac App Store, so you can't play them in cross-platform environments. And the performance in OpenGL drivers just isn't there. All this means that the Mac is an also-ran when it comes to gaming performance and a gaming platform. Sure, there are plenty of games available for the Mac, but Apple gets further and further behind every year when it comes to actually making the Mac a viable system for games. So, and I don't think it's anything new. I think that for a very long time you've had to be a Mac user first and a gamer second, but I don't see the situation improving anytime soon.
Sad panda.
Yeah, sad panda.
Doubly sad because the show is over and my watch did not arrive. I was sure that they would choose the least convenient time possible for it to arrive, which is during the show, but it was not to be. Alas. Well, I want to thank the entire community for joining us. You are absolutely the best community on the web, and we will see you all next week. Have a great week, everybody.
Bye, folks.
Thanks, guys.